Welcome to the Songbird Sade Knits podcast. My name is Mercedes and I'm coming to you from Guelph, Ontario, which are the traditional lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. It's January, early January, after the holiday and nearing the end of the first week back to school. And I had a little bit of time to podcast before I run off to a sewing class that I've registered for. And yeah, I've knit quite a few things since my last episode, and I've cast on quite a few things you've never seen before. So I thought before it all just gets away from me, I should create another video here and share with you what I've been working on. You can find me on Instagram as Songbird Sade, and I'm also on Ravelry as Songbird Sade Knits, although I must confess I haven't actually posted any new projects on Ravelry for probably a year or more. So a lot of my updated projects are not there. You'll just find, if you're interested to know what I'm working on, I just share on my YouTube channel, and I do post some on Instagram as well. So usually like my format would typically be where I would update you on the progress of knits that you've seen sort of in a previous episode. What state are they in as I'm working on them, or are they finished? But I'm realizing I just don't have the ability to podcast with that frequency. So some things are going to be projects you've never seen before and they're completely finished. And I don't necessarily have the ability to have a sort of keep up the conversation about knits that you may have seen previously. I will do my best, but if you are curious about something, if I don't show it here, feel free to ask in the comments, how's that going? Did you end up frogging it or anything like that? If continuity is important to you. And while we're talking about comments, I just wanted to thank all of the lovely viewers who comment regularly on my videos. It does mean a lot to me. It just gives me a boost and confirms to me that even though it's a small little piece of me and a small little way to connect with other people, that there are people out there watching and appreciating hearing about my projects and enjoying talking together about knitting. And so I just really appreciate you letting me know that you like my video, or that you let me know what you're working on, because ultimately that's why I do these videos. In part, it's to keep sort of a record of what I'm knitting, but I think mainly it's just to have a conversation about knitting and crafting generally. I had a friend visiting from Copenhagen recently, and she is a knitter, and she's one of the very few knitters that I actually know who's my age, which is odd. If you are on the internet, on YouTube, and into knitting videos and such, you feel as if you're part of this crafting community. But then, at least in my case, in my actual community where I live, yes, there are people crafting and knitting, but I don't really have opportunity to connect with them that often. So it just it's nice to keep up this online connection whenever possible. So, all right. Let me see. I have 5 or 6 finished knitted items to share with you. I have some sewing to share with you, and then of course a couple things that I'm knitting on. And before I show you things, I'll just let you know I really am trying my best not to buy any yarn. And I find the best way to keep up this behavior is to go through my stash regularly. Number one, to keep the moths at bay. And number two, to just reconnect with all the yarn that I have and all the plans that I have for that yarn, because a lot of it was purchased with a certain pattern in mind, and I can't wait to get around to knitting those. I'm just so excited to have those waiting for me to come to when I have the time. And when I go through my stash, I realize there's just so much there. There's so much potential, and there's so much time spoken for in the future with my knitting. And so it reconfirms to me that I don't need to buy any more yarn. I have plenty, and I just need to do my best to sort of be present with my knitting and focus on what I'm working on. And yes, sometimes that is hard, because a big aspect of knitting, one of the most enjoyable aspects, is the sort of creative element of either designing your own pattern or finding just the right pattern for a yarn, and also of course just browsing patterns generally and letting the inspiration come to you. That's a really fun aspect of the craft. And so I'm trying to find ways to do that without needing it all to be fresh, needing the yarn to be fresh. So yeah, but I find I have enough yarn in my stash that while some of it is spoken for, some of it I realize maybe my original intention isn't what I want anymore. And so there's still lots of possibility to find different patterns that match the yarn really well. And then of course I have lots of leftover yarns from other projects that can be combined in pretty much an endless amount of possibilities. So there's lots of creativity to put towards using up leftover yarns as well. All right, well, let's talk about the sewing first. So I have a sewing class coming up, and I'm actually going to make another one of these t-shirts. This is the Georgia Tee by Elizabeth Suzanne, and it's just like a really simple boxy t-shirt, and mine's cropped a little bit, and I would say it's an excellent beginner sewing pattern. I am an absolute beginner, and I made mine in some old fabric that I had. I've probably had this fabric for close to 20 years, which sounds odd, but I think that is true. And it's from a thrift store originally, and it was wool fabric. I can't pass up wool fabric when I see it, because it's kind of rare, and I love this color. And so when I say wool fabric, I mean it is a woven fabric. It's not a knit fabric, and it's like a boiled wool fabric. So when you cut it, the weave does not unravel. So in that sense, it's beginner friendly, but it was also a bit thick to work with. So luckily my sewing teacher helped me with the seam finishes so that I could choose ones that were appropriate for the fabric, because I really don't know anything about sewing, but this was a good way to get into it. And so I thought I'd make use of the pattern since I already have it, and I'm making another one of these in linen. So I'll show you that. So I've already started it, and I'm hoping to finish it maybe today or maybe in the next class that I have. So you can see the sleeves don't have their cuffs attached yet, but I have cut the whole thing. And what else have I done? I've pressed some of the seams, and I did put the neck bias binding on, but I have to redo that. Oh yeah, I sewed the shoulder seams, And on the linen, because it's thin, I'm able to do French seams. And yeah, on the neck binding, the bias binding, you can see I didn't do a great job there. And it's actually been a while since I did this, so I can't remember exactly what the problem was. I think what I did was I didn't pin it well enough, and the fabric is more slippery than this wool, and so I didn't pin it well enough, and then I wasn't holding it properly while I was feeding it through the machine, and so it just kind of got all bunched up. So I think I can rip the stitches on this and redo it, but I'm going to talk to my teacher about that first, because there was some cutting involved with this neck binding that I'm just not sure I can go backwards. I'll find out today. But anyway, this is my plan with sewing is to complement my wardrobe, because of course I have lots of wool knitted pieces, and then I have some linen and silk as well. But all my other things that are not knitted are not handmade, but I love to wear linen. Linen and wool are my favorite materials to wear. I just find them the most comfortable. I don't sweat strangely in them. They're breathable, they're soft, and I think they also pair really well together. So my plan is to, with my sewing, to make pieces for my wardrobe that are sort of timeless and very plain in a sense, so that I can pair them with all of my knits and layer and have them be pieces for multi-seasons. So that's my plan with my sewing. So I'm starting with really basic linen pieces. So that's the sewing piece that I'm going to work on today. And then I don't know how long that's going to take. It's possible I will finish it today. If I do, then I'm going to start another linen garment, and it's the Collage Gather Dress by Matchy Matchy Sewing Club. So this is a nice dress. There's no zippers or anything like that. It's just a pullover dress, and because it has a few pieces to it, which I imagine are easy to cut, you can mix and match your fabrics if you want to. You could of course make it all in one color, but it is a good pattern to have around if you want to use up scrap fabrics or thrifted fabrics or that kind of thing. So I have linen that I specifically bought for my recent sewing endeavors, and here it is. This is I think this colorway is called Haystack, and it's from Pure Linen Envy, which is a company here in Ontario. So it's kind of a yellowy green or a greenish yellow, and I'm going to use, I think, mostly this fabric, and then I have this old men's linen shirt that my brother-in-law was donating to the thrift store that I luckily grabbed before it could leave the house, and it is a pinstripe gray on gray fabric, and it is pure linen. So I thought this could make a nice contrast with this, and I'll just use small pieces of this. So for example, maybe I'll just use that pinstripe fabric here, because I don't think I have a long enough piece to use as a panel. If I do, that would be kind of interesting actually, but I don't think that I do. So it'll probably just appear there, which I think will look cute. And the other thing about pinstripe fabric is, I guess it's not really beginner friendly, because you have to then, you know, if it's important to you, you have to kind of make sure you cut really well, and then that your seams are really straight so that the pinstripes line up in a way that looks good, so that they're not, you know, ever so slightly angled. So maybe my teacher can help me with that as well. So hopefully that's an okay idea. If she says that it might be too difficult for me, I do have other fabrics that I can pair with this haystack linen, and of course I could just use all one color if I wanted to as well, which would be really lovely. So that's what I'm working on in my sewing class today. Okay, let's get to the knitting. Let's start with the accessories. I have 2 accessories that I finished since last time. One had been a whip for quite a while, and I may have shown it a couple episodes ago. And wow, I finally finished it, which feels so good. I wanted to tell you something actually. I've written a list of all the whips that I had since last episode, and it came to a number that was quite high. It was 17 whips, knitting, all knitting or crochet, 17. And I thought, wow, that's a lot. I'm quite overwhelmed by that, and I would like to clear out some of these items so that I can feel a little bit more refreshed and dedicated to some new projects or new cast-ons. And also just to have that closure. Like sometimes when you have a whip sitting around for such a long time, it can actually feel, you just don't have good feelings about it anymore, even if it's a lovely project. So I wrote that list, and I haven't actually checked off the ones that I've finished yet. So I'm going to go get that book and I'll check them off with you. So I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Okay, I had 17 whips in November of 2023. Okay, that included the purple 1x1 ribbed toque. I can check that off because I finished that. That's number 1 on the list. They're not in any particular order. Whoops. But I finished it. So this is a free Purl Soho pattern. I think it's called something like classic ribbed hat or simple ribbed hat, something like that. And I made mine in a smaller size than I would normally make. And it still fits, but that was a mistake. So just so I know for future, I will just make the adult small size. I think I made the size below that, which is like a kid's large size or a teenager size or something. I know Inga from Knitting Traditions always makes that size because she finds that her hats turn out bigger. But I'm a really tight knitter, so, and I think Inga might be more of a loose knitter, and so I should just know to follow that. Although I have had the experience before with their patterns, with their hat patterns, that I have also ended up with hats that are way too big, but sometimes it's really hard to tell when you've cast on for a hat how it's going to fit until you've knit almost all of the brim. So anyway, next time I'll just cast on the adult small. But this is what I've come up with. It's, I think I used 2 strands of a Mohair wool yarn that's from a place local to me called Wellington Fibres. And then I used 1 strand of BC Garn's, what is that called? BC Garn, can't remember what it's called. It's a wool and cotton blend. It's a really nice yarn. Very soft. I don't really like cotton at all. I don't like wearing cotton, and I don't really like knitting with it. But mixed with wool, it's that particular yarn is nice. So yeah, it created a really nice fabric. It's only slightly marled, I would say. It's not really like super noticeable. And I did a double folded brim because I just wanted it to be warm, and also I had a lot of yarn, and I actually still have lots of yarn left over from this one. So that's what it looks like. And I'm pretty happy with it. As I say, it's a little tight feeling. and possibly a little tight looking, but it's okay. I still like wearing it and it's not uncomfortable. It's just, I could see how a bigger size would just be a little bit more comfortable. So that's done. Very happy with that. That seemed like a lot of knitting. Okay, next on the list, Alpaca Toy. I can check that off. That was a crocheted Toft toy. I have one of the Toft toy books, crocheted animal toy books, and I had started an alpaca years ago, and it was just waiting for the body to be done. But the crochet stitch for the body, I could not keep track of. It was a loop stitch, and it was just like the sequence of making the loop combined with the sequence of when to do increases and decreases. I just could not keep straight in my head, and it was annoying. It just wasn't pleasurable. So I eventually decided I'm not going to do that stitch. I'm just going to crochet the body plain in single crochet and call it done. So I did that, and then my partner thought it would be cute if I did a little heart applique on the alpaca, because maybe I had negative feelings about it, and he thought that would be a nice way to just give it some love. And so I did that, and then I gifted that to a friend's daughter for Christmas. So I think she liked it. So that's done. I feel good about that. Number 3 on the list is Blue Mohair Raglin. I can check that off. So far, this is going really well. Blue Mohair Raglin. I don't know if I showed this to you at all. Maybe I did. I had this blue mohair from a thrift store that my mom gave to my sister. My sister made something with it, and then she still had tons left over, so then she gave it to me. And this is the tag. It's kind of like a vintage mohair. It's 75% mohair, 10% acrylic. It's like a bulky yarn. It's called Bouquet Floss. And this actually is from a mill that I assume does not exist anymore in Listowel, Ontario, called Spinrite Yarns. So Spinrite Yarns, Listowel, Ontario. I assume it was a mill. Anyway, I've never heard of them before, so I know there used to be quite a lot of wool mills in this area and in Ontario generally, and many of them are not in operation anymore, which is sad. So anyway, I rescued this yarn, and I just did a completely self-drafted raglan t-shirt with it. And I thought I had used up exactly, like to the inch, what I had of this yarn. And then I discovered one whole skein, one whole ball in my stash when I cleared it out a couple days ago. But I think it's okay, because it would have maybe given me strange proportions. Like I would have had to make the sleeves slightly longer, but they already come to my elbow. Or I would have had to make the body slightly longer, but it's kind of the perfect crop top. So I didn't do that. So there it is. My partner does not like this color at all. I think it actually is flattering on me. I'll know when I watch this video later, but it is bright. So it remains to be seen whether or not I will wear this, but it looks cool. Like it's just a bulky, fluffy t-shirt, which is kind of cool. But I haven't worn it yet. And I think it's kind of like the Cookie Monster color, but is that bad? I don't know. So what I would do differently if I were to make a t-shirt like this again is I would not do a rolled neck. It turned out kind of, with this bulky yarn, it turned out almost like a tube, and it looks weird. And unfortunately, I did the method where you knit it long and then you knit it down. You knit it together right here, and then you continue knitting. And so unfortunately, when you do it that way, you can't really go back and change it or cut it or anything like that. So it is what it is. Also for future, I won't do that method of tacking down a neckline anymore, because it makes a pretty tight, not stretchy neckline. it would be much better to just do the whip stitch method, which creates a really nice stretchy neckline. And then of course you can even change the length of your neckline if you do the whip stitch method. You know, if you end up having it too long, you can just sew it down at a different point. So that's what I did. And then for the bottom here, I just, it didn't really flare out, but I didn't want it to cinch in. So I just sort of gradually increased my needle size so that it wouldn't cinch in when I got to the bind off. Okay, so that's that. Next, crochet granny square vest. I finished that. My partner also thinks this is a weird item, but I actually love it. It is a bit loud, but I found it to be so useful because it's oversized and very warm, and it has a lot of neutral colors in it that happen to go with a lot of things that I wear. So I've actually worn this quite a lot, and I think it's cool. So here it is. This is the Agnes, what does she call it? The Agnes Granny Square Vest, Agnes Sweater Vest by Bethany Lynne Makes. It's just a tutorial on her blog, and it's a very easy tutorial to follow if you know basic crochet. I think you can do this, and then of course there's some knitting involved as well. But I actually had a lot of fun making this with leftover yarns. I did have to use a full skein for these parts here. I used a full skein of Briggs & Little worsted weight rag colorway because crochet just eats yarn. So that's one thing to keep in mind if you're using scraps for this vest, that you actually need quite a lot of scraps to complete this, and then you probably need a full skein. Yeah, I might have needed two. This is quite scrappy because I wanted this colorway to appear here and here, but I'd already used a full skein and I didn't want to buy more yarn, so I just used whatever else I had in my stash. But I probably would have gone through 2 full skeins if I wanted to buy more. So anyway, it's just a big oversized square vest with really deep armholes, and it fits over top of just about anything. And I love to wear this. Okay, I just had to pause there because my partner needed to come through. I don't want to linger on this too long, but I just wanted to, I'll just show you a close-up of some of the squares. So yeah, just all different yarns left over from projects, all yarns that I really, really love. I find crochet, because it condenses the yarn so much, it really isn't the best project or the best craft for sort of expressing the qualities of a really nice yarn. So I wouldn't buy yarn specific, like nice specialty yarn specifically for this project, but luckily I had quite a bit left over from all different projects, and so I thought it was nice to put them together in this vest, and the colors really, I think, go really well together. So I'm really happy with that. It's quite a unique piece as well. Yeah, like you can really customize the colors to suit you and suit your wardrobe. And, you know, there's also memories woven into that, because if you're using scraps, it reminds you of the other projects that you've worked on with that yarn. And yeah, and then you have a piece that really is quite unique that you won't see other people wandering around wearing. So I love it. I love it. What's next? Next is the Pory Cardigan. That's not done yet. It's been on hold. I haven't touched it. I have to completely frog the body up to the underarms almost, because I did an A-line shape and it looks terrible on me. So I just know for future that I will not do A-line shaping unless it's for a dress or something like that, but I don't need A-line shaping on my torso. It does not suit my body type. And in fact, the Sean sweater that I made somewhat recently, I did do A-line shaping on that. It took me forever to figure out the correct ratio of increases, and it still looks terrible, and I actually don't like wearing it because of that. So it's possible that I will frog that in the future as well, if I find that I just really am not wearing it because of that. Okay, number 6, Pauchia Raglan. This is a sort of concept of my own. I had just cast on a neckline for this, and I thought I would be interested in pursuing it, and I didn't. I actually frogged it, so I'm just going to cross it off the list. Last long pullover is next on the list. Okay, so this is actually a WIP, so we're just doing WIPs and finished objects all mixed in together. I think that's fine. So this is the last long pullover by Albina McLaughlin, and I've made quite a bit of progress on this, and I'm loving knitting on this, and I'm loving what's happening to the sweater. I'm loving the garment that I'm getting here. So it's a half fisherman's rib stitch pattern, and that creates just a really super dense, super squishy, and when I go to block it, it'll actually stretch quite a bit. It creates a stretchy fabric. So it was a bit difficult for me to decide on the size. I usually, because I knit tightly, I usually sort of make sure I pick a size that gives me a little bit of a buffer in terms of ease, because I'd rather have a sweater that's too big than too small. This though, I chose like even a neck size up, and I don't actually know why I did that. I have no idea. But when I was sort of revisiting this, I looked at how many stitches I had, and I thought, wow, I chose that size. I'm just going to go with it. I'm not going to change it at this point, because maybe there was a good rationale. I don't know what it was, but Albina does say that because of this stitch pattern, you can block it to be open, and it will stay like that a little bit, but then as you wear it, it'll naturally just sort of go back, like relax back to its almost pre-blocked shape. So I think I was thinking, okay, I want this to be oversized when it goes back to its shape. I don't want it to sort of get clingy at that point. I don't want to rely on having to block it to make it fit properly. So that's maybe why I cast on a larger size. It's gonna be a lot of sweater, but I'm hoping it'll be okay. My knitting friend in Copenhagen, she said she thinks it'll be okay. So we'll just go with that. And yeah, it's absolutely stunning. And then the neck will actually be tucked in like this when I wear it. So I'm knitting this with one strand of Rauma Fino, that's the green that you're seeing, and then the other strand is a single ply from Custom Woolen Mills. I won't get into it, but I've mentioned it many times before. This is a yarn that has just irked me ever since I've purchased it, and it's super problematic because of the high twist that it has. But actually it seems to be fine for this project. The Rauma Fino is very stable in terms of its twist, and so I think that's helping, and then I think the stitch pattern might be helping as well. So yeah, overall I'm just enjoying this, just enjoying knitting on it. It does hurt the hands a little bit, so I have another WIP to pair with it, just so that I don't get tired of doing it, and so I don't get a repetitive excuse me, repetitive stream injury. I'm actually going to just try this on for you too, because I just want you to see how nice it is. So, and then this will be tucked in, and it's not a tight turtleneck. It's very, very, it is stiff because of the type of yarn that I'm using, but it's not like squeezing my neck. It's very comfortable. So it looks a bit boxy right now on the camera, but I think it's going to look nice once it's blocked, and once sleeves go on, they sort of pull the shoulders down a little bit and it just looks better. So I think it's going to be gorgeous and really comfortable. Okay. Okay, I didn't lose any stitches. Okay. What's next on the list? I have Agnes Sweater. So that's a petite knit pattern for babies up to toddlers, up to children's size. It has like 15 sizes or something. It's kind of difficult to read actually because of that. I have made progress on that, but I haven't really touched it in the past month. So I'm not going to show it to you. It's not that interesting yet. It'll become interesting when I get close to the end. The Amy slipover, I have not touched that at all. I think it has like 10 rows, so. Okay, number 10 on the list is the w.i.p.s pullover that I completed. I can show that to you. This is a pattern by Midori Hirose, and it's a lovely pattern. It was a little bit of a slog to knit, even though it's on 6mm needles. It's all kind of stockinette, and I don't know why, it felt like it took forever to knit, but it was worth it. I would knit it again. I love the final result. So I made mine a crop top. You don't have to do that. You can make it any length you want. And it has a very interesting construction. So you actually start sort of with one side at the top. So you're actually knitting all the way along from sleeve cuff to sleeve cuff, and that's how you start the sweater. And there's lots of short row shaping to get this sort of puff sleeve, and then the neckline is just really simply designed, but it creates this pretty little boat scoop neck. And then once you finish sort of the upper body, you're just knitting a stockinette all the way down to wherever you want, and then the cuff. And I didn't follow the instructions for the bottom of the cuff. I think she does a 2x2 rib or maybe a 1x2 rib, and actually I kind of wish I had followed that. I just did a twisted rib, which I don't even like, but on this garment I don't mind it. It's a little bit, it kind of adds like a bit of a fancy feeling to this garment. And with the puff sleeves and this sort of neutral peachy color, it does have a bit of a fancy feeling to it, and I actually did wear it at Christmas time. And I really love this sweater. It's beautiful. So I used one strand of Rauma Fino, and I also used one strand of Gepard Garn Silk Mohair. And it gave me this kind of like salmon-y, fleshy salmon-y color, which I was very unsure of while I was knitting it, but it actually ends up suiting me quite well, and I really love it. So that is done, and I can highly recommend this pattern if you're looking for, of course, like most of Midori Hirose's patterns, you can use pretty much any yarn you want, any gauge, not any gauge, any thickness of yarn, and you'll get a slightly different material and sort of different quality to your finished garment, but it'll still look interesting and it'll still work out with the design. And so this is that kind of pattern, and yeah, I can highly recommend it if you want something that's sort of an overall simple pattern, but it has an interesting construction. So it's requires quite a lot of attention at the outset. Okay, that's done. Next, the Raspberry Ripple Cowichan sweater. It's actually called something like Rocky Mountain Cowichan sweater. I have not touched it. Next, Carver Classic by Julie Hoover. I cast this on for my partner, and I've since completely, I only had gotten like this much of a cuff done, or like a sleeve, and I was using DPNs, and I was getting gaps where the DPNs, where I would switch from one DPN to another, and that usually doesn't happen to me, so I don't know what I was doing, but it bothered me, so I frogged that, and I intend to cast that on once I'm done the last long pullover, but I will get short circulars for that. So Carver Classic, I'm just crossing that off the list. Number 13, this is a special one. This is the Muckle Roe sweater. I can check that off because I finished it. And if you've been watching my episodes, you'll know that I've had this on my needles for a very long time, and it was a problematic knit for me in terms of getting the fit right at the top. The pattern, the way the pattern is designed, and I'm not the only one who feels this way. There's quite a few comments on Ravelry that the sort of overall shape of the sweater is very unflattering, just kind of like a bag. And so anyway, I'm glad that it took me so long to address the issue and to finally finish it, because I think what happened is that it would sort of sit for a while, and somewhere either in my actual knitting practice or somewhere in my subconscious, the problem was worked out, and then I would come back to it and think, oh, I can do this, that'll look great. And yeah, so sometimes it's okay to just let projects rest indefinitely until you're ready to address them if there's a problem with them, because you might, you know, learn things in the interim that then you can apply to that knitting, or even just sometimes taking a rest. Solutions will just kind of come to you. And yeah, that's what happened with this project. So this is finally done. This is the Muckle Roe bottom by Marie Wallin, and then at the top on the neckline and the shoulders I followed the Weekender Light pattern by Andrea Mowry. And then on the sleeves I just did my own thing. I just did my own decreases, and then when I got to the cuff, I wanted this really long ribbing. I thought that would look kind of interesting, like just add a nice little detail. And I didn't want to have the decreases be visible there, so I just achieved a tapered look by decreasing my needle size. So the body of this sweater is knit on 2.75 millimeter needles, so this was a lot of knitting. And as I decreased through the cuff, I finished with a 2 millimeter needle for about 1.5 to 2 inches. So this was a lot of knitting, a lot of knitting. And I'm just so glad that when I was working on this, I just thought, I'm not going to cast anything else on until I finish this. I need to finish the sweater because I really want to wear it, and I just want to have that completion. And I'm really proud of this sweater as a result. And I love to wear it. It's very warm because I've used, in the body, I've used 1 strand of Topsy Farms single ply Canadian wool, and then I've used 1 strand of Knitting for All of Silk Mohair. So, and then it's a very dense fabric, so it's very warm, but because it's oversized, it's still very breathable. So it's a really nice sweater to wear. And then the contrast color is just Rauma Fino in a light gray. So this is probably the thing that I'm most happy with. And I'm glad that that sort of story is done, and now I can wear the sweater and have stories associated with the completed garment. Okay. Next on my list is the Log Cabin Blanket. This is a knitted blanket, all garter stitch. I haven't touched it, but I'm not really interested in finishing it just yet. I'm thinking it might become a gift, and the occasion for that gift has not occurred yet, if that makes sense. So I sort of started this blanket for myself, but now what I would like is that when the occasion for the gift sort of can be seen in the future, you know, then I can apply myself to this project with the intention of it becoming a gift, and then imbue the whole project with that intention and feeling. There's something about knitting for myself and then having the finished garment sort of be transferred to somebody else that doesn't feel, I always feel like it's hard for me to give it as a gift. I'd rather just be like, oh, do you want my, you know, hand-me-downs or something like that, which is not really fair to my knitting because a lot of effort goes into it, and it is a gift to receive hand knits. It's just for my own feelings. I like to knit with intention, and I like for gifts to be knit with that intention of being given to the receiver. So anyway, so I'm not going to touch that until the occasion presents itself, and then I will finish it up. There's not too much left to do, but I'll finish it up with that intention of it becoming a gift. Okay, number 15, garter square camping mat. I'm not going to pursue that project. I have all these garter squares that I made out of leftover yarn from a baby blanket that I made for my son. So the colors are lovely and they go really well together, but I don't need a camping mat and he doesn't. And my partner, sometimes like my partner just needs one thing for one purpose. He doesn't need multiple options. He just kind of forgets that he has them. So he doesn't need that. We have camping blankets, each of us. We each have one. That's all we need. So I'm not sure what to do with those garter squares yet. I haven't unraveled them, so I can't really cross it off the list yet, but I haven't come up with a purpose for them yet either, so I'm just gonna leave that there. Okay, number 16, forest tree shawl. That's actually the Haligarth shawl. That has been on my needles for like 3 years. It's a lace shawl, it's absolutely stunning, but because I can't remember the lace pattern, it's just difficult for me to knit. I always have to have the chart right in front of me, and I still haven't figured out a great system for keeping track of where I am. I just kind of remember where I am. So I'll have a knitting session where I'm just keeping track mentally of where I am, and then I set it down, and then when I pick it up, I have to figure out where I am. So until what I need to do is I think finish a lot of these other WIPs that I have, and then just make that my sole WIP and really focus on it the way I did with the Muckle Roe sweater. And then I think I'll be able to get into the rhythm of knitting it. But it's not something I want to frog. I love the design. It's like a very modern Shetland design. It's by Gudrun Johnston. And I think it's just gonna be a gorgeous shawl to wear. So I will address that someday soon. And number 17, the Deep Water Sweater by Jennifer Steingass. That one I had cut the neckline on. I think I showed this to you in a previous episode. I'd cut the neckline because it wasn't sitting right. And that was because I knit at a completely different gauge than the pattern. So I cut the neckline and then was going to knit up and do something different. So I did do that, but I kind of got lazy and just did a not very nice bind off. And anyway, it is technically done, and I actually passed this sweater on to my sister, and she said it fits her and she loves it. So I'm really happy about that. Yeah, so I'm crossing that off my list. I told her if the neckline bothers her, I can redo it for her at some point in the future, but I think for now, it's just a sweater that she's happy to have and happy to wear, and I'm really happy that it's not weighing on me, and that also it's gone to somebody who can appreciate it. And then, I don't know, it's kind of strange. This is not on the list, but I feel that I've never actually shown this to you before. So maybe it was number 18, I don't know. We'll find out. Anyway, I'm going to cross it off. This is the Terrazzo neck by Petite Knit that I finished. I hope I haven't shown this before. I finished this and I've been wearing it a lot as well. It's kind of a vest, kind of a slip over. I don't wear it as a vest because it's kind of weird looking, but I wear it a lot underneath my parka and underneath my wool jacket that I have. Also, if I'm biking, I wear it because it's just great to have this collar that covers this sort of gap that you would have with your regular clothing, and it doesn't move around, and you can still put a scarf over top if you need to, but you just know that your neck and your chest are going to be warm. So you can see that this has a bit of a twist to it, like the fabric itself is skewed, and that's because I used that darn Custom Woolen Mills single ply. I don't mean to discourage you from buying their yarn, but the single ply, I would, unless you intend on plying it with something, I personally would recommend against it because the twist is so high. There's just not much you can do to get rid of it. Although I should mention with the last long pullover that I'm knitting with that yarn, I realized if you wash the yarn first, it does relax the twist a little bit, and that's another reason why I think that one's not twisting as I'm knitting it. And the fabric is turning out pretty even. But with this, I didn't think to do that first. So this one has a skew to the fabric. I knit it with 2 strands of the Custom Woolen Mills single ply and 1 strand of Lichen and Lace Marsh mohair. That's sort of it was a gray mohair that changed tones throughout. It's created a truly, truly soft, beautiful fabric. And this is not in the pattern, this little tie toggle feature. I just added that because I found this type of slip over that's just kind of loose, like just a neck as they're called. This one especially because it actually comes down over the bust. It just kind of like flaps around, and I just thought that looked exceptionally strange, and also I didn't find it very comfortable. I just sort of always felt like it would be moving around on me, so I just wanted the toggles there to help it stay in place. And of course, if it's too tight over something that I'm wearing underneath, I can undo those toggles. So this I would count as a success in terms of using up a problematic yarn, but also creating a garment that I actually wear quite a lot. Okay, that is it for my list. It's a lot. So what I have left, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8 on the list plus a new cast on, which I'm going to add onto here. I couldn't help myself. I cast on New Year's Day because I wanted something fresh. So anyway, I do have a new cast on, which I'll show you in a minute. That's not bad. So I think I have 8 that I still have not completed, and a couple of them, for example, the log cabin blanket and the garter square camping mat, they're just gonna sit around for a while. And even the garter square camping mat, I'm almost tempted to cross it off because I'm not going to finish that. I'm just gonna cross it off. So that's not bad. I'll show you the last cast on that I have. This is the Loom Pullover by Sari Nordland. And I've completed the yoke, and I've already separated for the sleeves. And I'm just about to start some short rows, which in this pattern happen below the sleeve separation, which I've never done before. So that's interesting. I'm curious to see how that affects the back of the neck. And I just love this pattern so much. I think, especially because of the colors I've chosen, it really has a folk art feeling to it, like, you know, how people would have decorated their plain wooden furniture with floral motifs. It really reminds me of that because it has this sort of antique red color to it, and then this I have sort of a linen color, and then I've added a bit of a white highlight here. I just love this. Even though it's kind of such a specific design, I could maybe see myself knitting it again just because I love it so much. And I'm using, the main color is Cascade 220 in a colorway called Maple. I'm trying to branch out and use colors that I don't gravitate towards. So red is one of those colors for me. I don't love to wear red, and I don't like sort of seeing red very often, but I do think that anyone can wear any color. You just, if you're interested in looking good in that color, you just have to find the right tone. I don't know color theory, but I think it's tone. You just have to find the right tone of that color. So for me, I guess these sort of brownish reds look good on me. I do think that this is a flattering color on me, and I'm interested to see how I like wearing it when it's done. So yeah, the body is all plain, and then the sleeve cuffs have some of this color work on it. So I'll get to do the color work again. The contrast color though, here is a different yarn. It's a yarn that I got at a thrift store, so I don't even know what it is. And it's quite different from the Cascade. It's a 2-ply, whereas Cascade is 4-ply. And so I am noticing that my color work here especially is not very crisp, because I think the 2-ply kind of opens and doesn't fill the gaps of the fabric. And so, and it also doesn't push the other yarn forward, so I'm not getting crisp detail right here, which is a little bit disappointing to me because this pattern is so beautiful. And if you look at the pattern or the project photos, a lot of people who've used just Cascade 220 for both colors get a really crisp definition here. I'm not getting that. So that's another reason why I would maybe knit this sweater again in a different colorway, just to see if I can get really nice crisp color work there. But I think overall it's okay, especially from a distance. You don't notice that. So yeah, so in terms of works that in progress that I'm working on, it's just this and the last long pullover. I'm not, I'm resisting the urge to cast on anything else or sort of restart any of my older works, and I'm just trying to get these done before I do that. So that is everything for today, and I have to get going to my sewing class. So I will show you in the next video, hopefully, some finished sewing pieces. And until then, I hope that you are well and enjoying your crafting and your knitting, and yeah, just hope you're at peace and just settling into the season. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.